Hello my dear health seekers, Inga from Health Origins here. So today I've got an exciting video for you where I'm going to be making two pizzas. One is BBQ Cauliflower Pizza and another is a sweet dessert pizza. So let's begin. So we'll start by making the dough. So I've got 5 cups of fine wholemeal flour. So this is unrefined wholemeal flour, but make sure it's actually fine. So it's kind of more, sometimes it's called pastry flour. So this is 5 cups. And the recipe I'm following for this dough is from Pick Up Lime Sadia. So I'm following her recipe, and there she was using self-raising flour. So to make this self-raising flour, you need 2 teaspoons of baking powder per 1 cup of flour. So that seems quite a lot, but that's what I've saw, kind of measurements that advise that's how you can make your own self-raising flour. So because this is 5 cups of flour, so I need 10 teaspoons of baking powder. So let me just do 10. There we go, so that's 10 teaspoons. Seems quite a lot of baking powder, but I'll trust the measurements in recipes online. So I'm just gonna mix that up so that the baking powder distributes itself evenly here. So that's good to go now. And then I've got 2 cups of lukewarm water where I'm gonna mix in 4 tablespoons of my sunflower seed butter, because in her recipe Sadia used oil. I'm not obviously using oil, so I'm gonna just dissolve 4 tablespoons of, because I'm doubling her recipe, so she said 2 tablespoons, so I'm gonna do 4 tablespoons of sunflower seed butter, or you could use tahini as well. So I'm gonna just do 4 tablespoons here, and water being warm will help us to mix it up, and I like mixing things like that with a whisk because I find it distributes it much easier. So just gonna mix it in. So that's mixed in more or less. So I'm gonna just pour this over our, oh, and actually I forgot, we need 2 teaspoons of salt as well. It's best obviously if you mix it with the dry, but never mind, I'm gonna just put it in here. So 2 teaspoons of salt. It seems a lot of salt, but this is obviously a double recipe. So I'm gonna just start mixing with a spatula, and then we'll continue on once it resembles a dough more. Then I'm gonna continue with my hands. So I'm gonna try kneading it by hand and see if it comes together. And if the dough is going to be a little bit too sticky or too soft, I've got some more wholemeal flour to add. So it's still fairly sticky, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean my hands off now, wash them, make them slightly moist, and then continue to knead, because that way the dough is not gonna stick to my fingers that much. So now my hands are clean and slightly moist, so I'm gonna continue kneading the dough. In fact, I'm gonna just take it out of the bowl and onto my clean work surface. and you want to knead it for a few minutes for gluten to start forming and for the dough to become kind of smoother. So the way I like doing this is to kind of knead it that way and then a little bit that way, just kind of rolling away from me. So that helps to develop that gluten. It is fairly actually sticky, so I'm gonna put a couple of teaspoons of flour just on here and on the surface a little bit, so that we could knead it better. Just add a teaspoon of flour at a time, because you don't want to put too much flour, because then it becomes quite dry and quite kind of stiff dough. So yeah, so that's this feeling that I can actually knead it better now. So yeah, so you knead it for a little while until it becomes kind of smoother, softer dough. You can make this from white flour. That's what Sadia was doing in her recipe. But obviously here on this channel, I try to avoid all kind of refined flours or sugars and oil. So that's why kind of, and it's slightly different texture obviously because we're not adding oil, but that little bit of sunflower seed butter should hopefully help with the elasticity and the fat content of the dough. So it shouldn't be too far away from the original recipe. So just add a tiny bit more on the floured surface, even, and keep on kneading. So I'll knead it for about 5 minutes or so, or until it feels like really soft. So now the dough is feeling quite soft, so I'm just rolling it into this little ball. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a little bit of flour at the bottom of this bowl and add it to the bowl. Tiny bit of flour on the sides just so that it doesn't stick, and I'm gonna cover it with a towel, and then we're gonna leave this to rest for about 20 minutes so the gluten relax, and it's gonna be even more kind of gluten develops and relaxes basically, and it's gonna be ready to roll out. So while we wait for the dough to rest, I'm going to be making my barbecue cauliflower for my savory or barbecue pizza. So I've got about 2 cups of cauliflower florets that I actually have slightly steamed, so about 5 minutes steaming. But you could do it with raw cauliflower. You'll just need to double the time you're gonna be baking it. So I'm gonna be baking for about 10 minutes, whereas if you start from raw, then about 20 minutes and turning cauliflower once halfway. So I've got 2 cups of slightly steamed cauliflower, and this is 1/3 cup of my barbecue sauce. You know, if you haven't tried or made my yummy barbecue sauce, then I'll link to the recipe down below and in the card above. I would definitely recommend making this, but you could also use any store-bought barbecue sauce for this. So this is 1/3 cup. So I'm gonna add this to my cauliflower florets, and then I'm also gonna put 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder here, and about 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika as well. So just give that extra smoky flavor. So I'm just gonna mix that through and mix it in with the cauliflower pieces, obviously carefully not to break them up. That's why, like I said, you know, just partially steam them, don't over steam them, because they will be a bit too brittle to handle and mix. And that's why actually doing it raw might help you here, because then they're a bit more sturdy. So right, I think I mix them as much as I can. And we're gonna pour it onto a baking tray. You could use just a non-stick baking tray like I've got, or you could also put a parchment paper or a silicone mat as well. So I'm just gonna put my cauliflower on and distribute it evenly, so every piece has a chance to properly bake. And I'm preheating my oven on 200 degrees Celsius, because mine is a fan assisted oven, but if yours is not, then do 220 degrees Celsius. So just distributing these nicely. And that is it. So this is now ready to go into the oven for about 10 minutes. So now we're gonna make cheese for both pizzas, both the sweet and the savory. So I'm gonna be following pretty much my cashew melty cheese recipe. So I've soaked about 1 cup and a bit, so maybe 1.5 cups here, so a little bit more cashews. So I'll be adding you know, other ingredients a little bit as well, but what I did, I poured boiling water on the cashews and left them to soak for about half an hour or so, and that way, you know, they will be ready to use. Or you could soak them overnight, or for at least 2 hours if you do it with cold or just warm water. So I'm going to add them to my blender. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be making first like the basic sweet cashew cheese, if you like, without adding, you know, too much salt or onion powder and things like that, so we can reserve some for our sweet pizza, and then obviously the rest we'll make for the savory. So I've got the cashews in, then we're gonna add just 1/2 cup of instead of water, we're going to be using soy milk, because I want it nice and creamy. So I'm going to add actually about 1/2 cup of milk at this point, because for this the sweet batch we're not going to be adding any arrowroot powder. We're going to be just, you know, spooning it on as is. So I want it to be thicker, not too thin, because we're not going to heat this one up. So a bit of 1/2 cup of milk. Then I'm going to put about maybe a teaspoon of lime juice, just a little bit here. I'll put just a little pinch of salt, because it needs 1/2 teaspoon for the whole recipe, but obviously we're making a sweet kind of cashew cheese, so I just put a little pinch, so it just you know, just adds that little bit, but it doesn't become like really salty cheese. Then I'm going to be adding a tablespoon and a bit of apple cider vinegar. So 1 tablespoon and probably 1.5 or something like that. And that is it. So I'm going to blend this now with this combination, and we're gonna taste test it in a second. So I'm actually really struggling to blend this until smooth, because it's such a thick cheese. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pour the rest of the milk, so this is gonna be 1 cup of milk altogether, and also I'm gonna add a tablespoon of arrowroot starch here, and then I'm gonna cook both the sweet and savory cheeses in separate pans as well. So that way it'll be much easier for me to blend it with more liquid. So let's have a look. So yeah, so this cheese is looking much smoother. I think I'm gonna give it another half a minute or so, and this will be ready. So now the cashew cheese is looking really creamy. So I'm gonna pour about maybe half of the amount. So I left just enough, and we're gonna be adding a couple of ingredients to make this a savory cheese. So the ingredients I'm gonna add are like in my cashew cheese recipe, actually not 4, I'll do 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast because we've got less cheese now. So a couple of tablespoons of nutritional yeast here, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon more of salt. And also I'm gonna put half a teaspoon of onion powder here. So there you go. And I'm gonna be blending it for probably another minute or so. And to make sure that it blends really well, I'm gonna add maybe about, you know, a couple of tablespoons of water just to help it blend. And now, before I go to heat up the sweet cheese, I'm gonna be adding about a tablespoon of maple syrup in here, just to sweeten it up a little bit. So I'll save your time, and I'm gonna go heat it up in there. Basically all you want to do is you want to, you know, have it on medium low heat, you know, stir it and until it becomes bubbling and, you know, kind of starts boiling basically, and boil it for maybe a minute, and that should thicken up. So now we're going to transfer the savory cheese, cashew cheese, into another pot. So yeah, so let me give this a little taste test. So yummy. I love this savory cashew cheese. So I'm gonna be heating that one up as well in the kitchen there, and then get back to you once this is thickened up. So the dough has risen quite a bit. Actually, it's been probably more about like 40 minutes rather than 20 minutes. So definitely had enough time. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take it out and I'm gonna divide it into 2 because we're making 1 sweet and 1 savory pizza. So just divide it into 2. Put a cover on the other one while I'm working with this one. And basically, I'm just gonna roll it out, and we're gonna be putting it on my baking sheet here. So I'm gonna try and make it more square shaped. So to do that, it helps if you kind of fold it as an envelope shape like this. And that way, just put a little bit of flour, and that way when you roll it, it's more likely to roll in a square shape for you. So we want to make it quite a thin crust. So I'm going to try and make obviously a long, not square, but rectangle, shall we say. So yeah, I'm gonna just put some flour on your rolling pin as well if it sticks. And if you're struggling to roll it out, it kind of keeps on retracting, then you might want to put you know, a towel on top of it and leave it to rest for another 5 minutes and then continue rolling, because the gluten will relax further. And try not to put too much flour, like I said, you know, because the more flour you put, the tougher your pizza base will be. I'm trying to obviously match this with the shape of my baking tin, so I'm gonna try and cover, you know, as much as I can with this. So we need to roll it a little bit even thinner. So that is looking about the right shape for me. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna roll it onto my rolling pin. Make sure I put a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick to it, but roll it on like that, and that will help you take it over from the table onto your baking tin. So just put it there and roll it out. There you go. So this is pretty good match. There we go. So this is one dough ready. I'm gonna do the other one. So I've got my oven preheating on 200 degrees Celsius. It's a fan oven, so could be a little bit hotter if it's, you know, if it's not fan oven. And I'm going to be starting with my savory pizza. So I've got my barbecue sauce, and I'm going to just spread it onto the pizza instead of tomato sauce because we're making a barbecue pizza. So maybe about 3 tablespoons of this barbecue sauce, and then evenly distributed all over. So this is good. Now I'm going to be putting my barbecue cauliflower evenly on the pizza. So that has obviously baked for about 10 minutes. So this is a very minimal in ingredients pizza, but the flavors are so amazing that you don't need very many ingredients. You could probably add, you know, say some neutral things like courgette would work here. I'm going to be adding my caramelized onions. So this is one large red onion that I've caramelized. So the way I did it was just to dry fry it initially. When it was starting to stick, I would deglaze it with some olive brine. You can do it with just a tablespoon of water at a time. And then, you know, towards the end, I added a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar to it. If you're not using olive brine, you might want to add maybe couple of tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, because these are nice balsamic caramelized onions. And in fact, you're probably better off putting them first at the base rather than cauliflower, but anyway, whichever way you do it, it's gonna work well. So these, I love caramelized onions, and these are kind of have like taste a little bit pickly because they've got that tartness from the balsamic vinegar. It's just divine. Beautiful. Try and distribute it as evenly as you can. And then the last bit is our cashew cheese. So it's kind of hardened a little bit, but basically take teaspoons of the cheese and just place it everywhere. So the pizza is ready to go into the oven. I used almost all of my cashew cheese. So I'm gonna prepare the sweet one, and then we're gonna be popping them in the oven together. So here, apologies because my microphone has died and one of the cameras has died on me as well. So basically I was showing you how I was putting together my sweet or dessert pizza. So for the base sauce, I've made my raspberry vinaigrette, except that I didn't make it savory. I omitted the onion powder and the salt. So basically I whizzed up together 1 cup of raspberries, 1/4 of a cup of balsamic vinegar, and 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. And then I heated it on the stove for about 5 to 7 minutes until it reduced and thickened. And then I'm gonna be laying it all over the pizza as a base sauce. Then I was laying out the 3 fruits I was using for this. So first I've started with some pineapple pieces. So these were canned pineapple pieces that were canned in juice, and I've chopped up in smaller pieces and I laid them all over the pizza first. So the next ingredient were really juicy black cherries, super sweet and super ripe. So I've halved them and took the stone out, and I'm gonna be laying it in between the pineapple slices. Then I added some raspberries from our garden. And then the final ingredient was the sweet cashew cheese. So I basically used a teaspoon and put dollops of it all over the pizza, and I used up all the cheese because you can't have too much cheese, can you? So that is the completed pizza ready to go into the oven. So look at this pizza. So this is the savory one done. I've decided to bake them separately. So yeah, so let me slice it up and give a little taste test. So I can't indulge in these pizzas too much because I'm taking them to a vegan baking club for our picnic, but I'm gonna have that little piece to taste test it for you. Got the cauliflower. Let me try it with the cheese. Yummy. Wow. It's really good. You could probably, if you wanted to, you could add a little bit more barbecue sauce on the cauliflower after they come out of the oven. Maybe just another few tablespoons just to kind of make them a little bit more wet and moist again. But oh, this is really good. I hope my baking club ladies will like it. So let me check if my sweet pizza, my dessert pizza is finished, and we can taste test that one too. So this is the sweet pizza. It looks amazing. So let me slice it and try a piece. So I've cut a tiny piece for me to try. It's still hot, but I'm gonna give it a go. The pineapple and the cheese. Yummy. Wow. It is really good actually. Especially when you get that cheese, that base, the raspberry kind of vinaigrette reduction. I haven't tried the raspberry on top or the cherry, but I'm sure they'll be delicious too. So yeah, so this is a success. The sweet and savory pizzas. So let me know which one are you interested to try yourself. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, welcome and subscribe for more videos just like this on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And this whole month of July, I'm doing 30 videos in 30 days, so you'll see a whole lot more of me. And remember guys, food is fuel, so be mindful of what you put in the body. Until next time.